In a sleek Boston boardroom, Sarah Miller's 25-year career shattered with a single forged signature. Whose hand betrayed her? A chilling recording revealed her boss plotting to silence her, while a faded letter from her dying daughter whispered strength through the chaos. Was it revenge or justice when 70% of the firm's clients walked away, leaving ashes where loyalty once stood? Hit that subscribe button and join us to unravel this tale. Help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. In the heart of Boston, where glass towers gleamed against a gray March sky in 2025, Sarah Miller stepped into the sleek boardroom of Franklin and Associates with the confidence of someone who'd built an empire brick by brick. At 58, her silver-streaked hair framed a face etched with quiet resilience, a testament to 25 years of turning a scrappy legal consulting firm into a powerhouse. But the air felt wrong today. Too still, too cold. James Carter, the new managing partner with slicked-back hair and a smile sharper than a blade, sat at the head of the polished mahogany table. Beside him, Lisa Thompson from HR fidgeted with her pen, her eyes darting anywhere but Sarah's. "We're restructuring the client relations department," James began, his voice smooth as oil spilling over gravel. "Sarah, today will be your last day." The words crashed through the room like a guillotine, severing a quarter-century of loyalty in seconds. Sarah's breath caught, but she steadied herself, her hands gripping the chair's armrests. "After 25 years?" she asked, her tone calm despite the earthquake splintering her insides. James slid a manila envelope across the table, his practiced regret as hollow as a drum. "Business isn't personal. 2 months' salary, benefits through the quarter. It's generous." Lisa nodded, her sympathy a flimsy mask. "It affects several departments, not a reflection on you." But Sarah's eyes narrowed as she opened the envelope. The termination papers bore Robert Johnson's signature, her mentor, the founder who'd hired her in 1998. Yet something was off. The loops in his R were too tight. The slant too sharp, not the sprawling, confident scrawl she'd seen on 1,000 memos. "Does Robert know about this?" she pressed, her voice a quiet blade. James's jaw twitched, a crack in his polished facade. "All partners were consulted," he said, dodging the question like a politician caught in a lie. Sarah's mind raced. Robert had been in London for 3 weeks brokering a European expansion. Had he really signed off on this? Or was James hiding something darker, a forged betrayal to bury her? "Best of luck," James concluded, his smile never reaching his icy blue eyes. "Security will escort you out. Standard protocol." The irony stung. Sarah had written that protocol herself 12 years ago. The walk to her desk felt like a funeral march, the security guard trailing awkwardly behind her like a shadow she couldn't shake. Her office, once a sanctuary of client photos and thank you notes, now echoed with finality. She packed methodically. A crystal paperweight from Robert for her 20th anniversary, a stack of cards from the Evans family after she'd saved their merger, a faded photo from 2008. In it, she stood beside Robert, both beaming, with 8-year-old Sophie Miller, her daughter, giggling between them, her pigtails bouncing. Sophie, who'd lost her battle with leukemia 5 years ago. Franklin and Associates had paid her medical bills when insurance failed, a lifeline in Sarah's darkest hour. Now they discarded her like a used tissue. Her phone buzzed as she lifted the box. A text from Jennifer Brooks, CEO of Winters Healthcare, their biggest client. "Sarah, heard troubling rumors about changes. Call me ASAP." Before she could respond, another message pinged. This one from Ryan Cooper, her assistant of 6 years. "James sold 10% of the company last week. Money didn't hit the firm's accounts, went straight to his personal one. Be careful." Sarah froze, the box trembling in her hands. Was this a ruthless business play or outright corruption? The question gnawed at her as James watched from his glass-walled office, already on the phone, spinning his web. She stumbled to her car in the underground garage, the weight of the box nothing compared to the betrayal crushing her chest. Sliding behind the wheel, she opened the envelope again, staring at the forged signature. Robert's voice echoed in her memory. "You're the heart of this place, Sarah," he'd said at her 20th anniversary gala, his British accent warm with pride. Had he turned on her, or was James pulling strings she couldn't yet see? Then came the second blow. Tucked in the severance details a line in fine print. Her pension, painstakingly earned over 25 years, had been slashed by 60% due to financial restructuring. She'd counted on that money, not for luxury, but survival. Since Sophie's death, she'd lived frugally, her modest apartment a shrine to her daughter's memory. Now, at 58, she faced a future of uncertainty, her safety net shredded by the firm she'd given her life to. Tears welled as she clutched the photo of Sophie. She could still hear her daughter's laugh, see her frail hands clutching crayons in the hospital. "You're my hero, Mommy," Sophie had whispered once, her voice a thread of light in the dark. That memory shattered Sarah now, her sobs echoing in the empty car. How could they do this? How could Robert let this happen? Or was he a victim too? As she wiped her eyes, another text from Ryan flashed. "James's daughter Ashley is taking your job. Jennifer Brooks hates her." Sarah's grip tightened on the wheel. Ashley Carter, 28, brash and green, had clashed with Jennifer in a meeting last year, mansplaining healthcare to a CEO who'd built an empire. If James was planting his daughter in her place, this wasn't just restructuring, it was a coup. The engine roared to life, but Sarah didn't move. She stared at the dashboard, Sophie's photo trembling in her hand. Something was rotten at Franklin & Associates, and she wasn't leaving quietly. Not yet. Who forged Robert's name? What was James hiding? And why did her gut scream that this was only the beginning? Sarah Miller sat in her parked car, the hum of Boston's morning traffic a dull roar beyond the concrete walls of the Franklin & Associates garage. Her hands still trembled from the shock of her termination. Sophie's faded photo, a fragile anchor in her lap. The forged signature on her severance papers gnawed at her mind like a splinter she couldn't pull free. Before she could process James Carter's betrayal or Robert Johnson's apparent complicity, her phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with a name that carried weight. Jennifer Brooks, CEO of Winters Healthcare, the firm's golden goose bringing in $4 million a year. Sarah heard troubling rumors about changes. "James is replacing you with his daughter, Ashley Carter. Call me ASAP." The words hit like a slap, reigniting the ember of disbelief smoldering in her chest. Ashley Carter. James's 28-year-old daughter, all sharp heels and sharper arrogance, was stepping into her shoes. Sarah's memory flashed to a strategy session last year. Ashley, then a junior associate, had tried to lecture Jennifer on healthcare logistics, her voice dripping with entitlement. Jennifer had shut her down with a single icy glare. "I built this company from nothing, kid. Don't explain my business to me." Now, James was betting the firm's biggest client on her. Sarah's thumb hovered over the call button, but another text pinged before she could dial. Ryan Cooper, her loyal assistant, again. "Heads up. Michael Evans and Emily Parker are freaking out. New contracts have a 20% fee hike buried in the fine print. They're saying they're done if you're not there." Her pulse quickened. Michael from Archer Pharmaceuticals and Emily from Summit Financial weren't just clients. They were relationships she'd nurtured for decades. She knew Michael's son had just started at MIT. She'd sent Emily a bottle of champagne when Summit hit its billion-dollar milestone. They trusted her, not the firm. And now James was gouging them behind her back? She dialed Jennifer, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "Jen, it's Sarah. I'm out effective today." A sharp intake of breath crackled through the line. "You're kidding me," Jennifer snapped, her tone a mix of fury and disbelief. "James emailed me an hour ago saying Ashley's my new point person. That girl couldn't manage a lemonade stand, let alone my $4 million account. What the hell is he playing at?" Sarah hesitated, professionalism warring with the raw truth clawing at her throat. "Restructuring," he called it. "I didn't see it coming." "Didn't see it coming?" Jennifer's laugh was bitter. "Sarah, we've known each other for 12 years. Don't give me the corporate line. Ashley's his daughter. Everyone knows it. He's turning your firm into a family dynasty, and I'm not playing along. Where are you going next? The question hung heavy. Sarah hadn't even thought that far. Her world had imploded in the last hour. I don't know yet, she admitted. Well, figure it out fast, Jennifer said. Our contract's up in 60 days, and I'd rather follow you than deal with that brat. The call ended, but the phone didn't stay silent. Michael Evans rang next, his gruff voice tight with urgency. Sarah, what's this about a fee increase? I got a revised contract this morning, 20% more, no explanation. You didn't sign off on this, did you? Her stomach sank. No, Michael, I was fired 30 minutes ago. A pause, then a low curse. You're the only reason we stayed. If you're gone, I'm taking my business elsewhere. Emily Parker echoed the sentiment minutes later. Summit's out if you're not in, Sarah. This smells like a cash grab. 3 calls, 3 pillars of Franklin and Associates revenue, over 60% of the firm's yearly haul. Ready to walk because of her. Sarah's head spun. She hadn't solicited them, hadn't badmouthed James. They were jumping ship on their own, a tidal wave she hadn't meant to unleash. But beneath the shock, a flicker of pride burned. She'd built those bonds with late-night strategy sessions, handwritten notes, and trust no memo could transfer. James thought he could replace her with Ashley? He didn't understand the game he just lost. Her phone buzzed again. Ryan, relentless as ever. More dirt. James's 10% sale last week? Money's in his personal account, not the firm's. I dug through some emails. He's been meeting with Summit Ventures in secret. Watch your back. Sarah's breath hitched. Summit Ventures, the majority shareholder, had fueled the firm's expansion 2 years ago. If James was pocketing millions while cozying up to them, was this a power grab or straight up theft? The line between ruthless ambition and corruption blurred, and Sarah didn't have the answers. Not yet. She leaned back in the driver's seat, staring at the ceiling of her beat-up sedan, the weight of 25 years pressed down. Every client dinner, every crisis averted, every time she'd chosen Franklin over her own life. After Sophie's diagnosis, she'd worked through chemo nights, laptop glowing beside hospital beds because the firm was her family when her real one crumbled. Robert had been there, a rock when she had none, promising her a future. Now, James had torched it all, planting his daughter like a flag on her grave. Tears stung her eyes again, but this time anger simmered beneath them. She wiped her face, fingers brushing Sophie's photo. I'm not done, baby, she whispered, a vow to the ghost of her daughter's smile. James might have the boardroom, but Sarah had the clients, the real power he'd never grasp. And if Ryan was right, if James was stealing, she'd find proof. Her phone lit up one last time. Jennifer again. Lunch tomorrow. We need to talk about options. Sarah nodded to herself, the ember in her chest flaring into a flame. This wasn't over. James thought he'd silenced her, but the fire was just beginning to burn. What was he hiding behind that 10% sale? And how far would he go to keep it buried? Sarah Miller's modest Boston apartment felt like a cage 3 days after her firing from Franklin and Associates. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the hum of her ancient fridge and the occasional buzz of her phone. Colleagues texting condolences she didn't want. She sat at her kitchen table, Sophie's photo propped against a chipped mug, her severance papers strewn like wreckage from a storm. The forged signature, supposedly Robert Johnson, stared back at her, a riddle she couldn't solve. Was her mentor, her rock, complicit in James Carter's coup, or was something uglier lurking beneath? The doorbell jolted her from her spiral, sharp and unexpected. A courier thrust a plain envelope into her hands and vanished before she could ask questions. No return address, just her name scrawled in black ink. Her pulse quickened as she tore it open, revealing a USB drive nestled in bubble wrap. She plugged it into her laptop, her breath shallow, and clicked play. Static crackled. Then James's voice sliced through, cold, deliberate. Sarah's a threat. She knows too much about how we run things. If she talks to clients about the fee hikes, we're done. Firing her was the only way to shut her up. A weaker voice followed, Robert's, unmistakable despite the strain. She saved us in 2008, James. We can't do this to her. James's reply was a venomous hiss. You're past your prime, Robert. Keep quiet or I'll dig up that old loan and bury you with it. Your choice. The recording cut off, leaving Sarah frozen, her hands trembling over the keys. Robert had fought for her, feebly, yes, but he tried, and that loan? Her mind raced back 15 years. 2009, the recession, gutting the firm. Robert confessing in a late-night meeting that he'd taken an illegal loan to keep them afloat. She'd been the only one he told, swearing her to secrecy. Did James have proof? Was he blackmailing Robert to force her out? Her phone buzzed, shattering the silence. A blocked number. Keep your mouth shut or your family pays. The words glowed on the screen, a dagger in her gut. She lived alone. Sophie, gone. Her husband long divorced, but her nephew, Ethan, 12, her sister's boy, was all she had left. He'd slept over last month, sprawled on her couch with comic books, calling her Aunt Sarah the superhero. Panic clawed at her throat. Was James unhinged enough to hurt a kid? Or was this a bluff to break her? She stumbled to the window, peering through the blinds at the empty street, her breath fogging the glass. She needed grounding, something to hold on to. In a daze, she dug through a drawer of keepsakes, Sophie's old drawings, a hospital bracelet, until her fingers brushed a folded note. She unfolded it, her daughter's shaky handwriting spilling across the page. Mom, you're the strongest person I know. Don't ever give up, okay? Love, Sophie. The paper crumpled in her grip as sobs tore through her, raw and unstoppable. She saw Sophie's frail smile, her bald head wrapped in a scarf, whispering that promise through a morphine haze. Sarah had kept fighting then, through chemo, through grief. She'd fight now too. Wiping her face, she replayed the recording, each word a match strike on her resolve. James wasn't just greedy, he was ruthless, dangling Robert's past like a noose. But why send her this? A whistleblower? A trap? Her phone pinged again. Ryan Cooper, her lifeline. Overheard James today. He's pushing Robert to resign, saying he's a liability. Summit Ventures is in on it. They're meeting tomorrow. Sarah's jaw tightened. Summit Ventures, the shadowy majority shareholder, had been James's golden ticket since they'd bought it 2 years ago. Were they backing his power grab? Or had he sold them a lie with that 10% cut he'd pocketed? She paced the apartment, Sophie's note clutched like a talisman. The threat loomed, Ethan's safety, her own. But the recording was a weapon too. She could expose James, drag his blackmail into the light. But what about Robert? That loan wasn't just his shame, it was the firm's salvation in '09. She'd watched him sign it, hands shaking, knowing it could ruin him. If she used this, she'd torch his legacy to save herself. Loyalty or justice, which mattered more? Her landline rang, a relic she rarely used, jolting her nerves. She hesitated, then picked up. Sarah, it's Robert. His British accent was frayed, barely above a whisper. I just got back from London. James sidelined me, emergency vote while I was gone. I didn't sign anything, her heart lurched. Then why is your name on my papers? A long pause. He's forcing me out too? I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have fought harder. His voice broke, a crack in the man she'd once idolized. Are you okay? She asked, softer now. No, he admitted, but you deserve better than this. The call ended, leaving her reeling. Robert wasn't the enemy. James was the puppeteer, pulling strings she hadn't seen. The threat, the recording, the forged signature, it all pointed to a man who'd burn everything to win. But what was his endgame? And who'd slipped her that USB? She sank into a chair, Sophie's words echoing. Don't give up. She wouldn't. Not when the shadows were this deep. Sarah Miller hadn't slept in 48 hours. Her Boston apartment, a fortress of paranoia since the anonymous threat lit up her phone. Keep your mouth shut or your family pays. The words looped in her mind, a sinister drumbeat, as she double-checked the locks and peeked through the blinds at the rain-slicked street below. Ethan, her 12-year-old nephew, was safe with her sister 20 miles away, but the fear gnawed at her. A mother's instinct never dulled by Sophie's loss. James Carter's shadow loomed larger with every revelation, and now, a week after her firing, the fight was no longer just about her pride, it was about survival. Her laptop glowed on the kitchen table. The USB recording paused mid-threat. James's voice vowing to bury Robert Johnson with a 15-year-old secret. She'd listened a dozen times, each playback tightening the knot in her chest. Robert's call last night had confirmed the forgery. James had hijacked the firm while Robert was overseas. But his broken apology offered no shield against the storm crashing down. Then, at 9 a.m., the mail slot clattered, and a thick envelope slid onto her floor. She tore it open, her breath catching at the legal letterhead. Franklin and Associates was suing her for $5 million, claiming she'd incited clients to breach contract. The accusation was a lie. She hadn't reached out to anyone, but the intent was clear. Bankrupt her, silence her, crush her before she could strike back. Worse, a bank alert pinged her phone. Her savings account? $43,000. Her lifeline was frozen, flagged for suspicious activity. She called the bank, voice shaking, and got a robotic reply. Under review, ma'am. Could take weeks. Weeks she didn't have. At 58, with her pension gutted and no job, James had her pinned against the ropes. Was this his doing too? A financial chokehold to match the threat? Her landline shrilled, cutting through the panic. She snatched it up, expecting another blow, but Robert's voice rasped through, faint as a dying ember. Sarah, I'm trapped. James has security locking me in my office. Says I'm a liability. He's forcing me to sign a resignation or he'll leak the loan. A cough rattled the line, wet and deep, and Sarah's stomach twisted. Robert? What's wrong? His pause stretched too long. Cancer, he whispered. Stage 4, 6 months, maybe less. I hid it to keep the firm steady. Her knees buckled and she sank into a chair. Why didn't you tell me? She choked out. You were like a daughter, Sarah, he said, his voice cracking. After Sophie, I couldn't burden you. I'm so sorry I didn't stop him. Tears burned her eyes, memories flooding back. Robert at Sophie's bedside, slipping her a stuffed bear when chemo stole her smile. Robert at her funeral, holding Sarah as she sobbed. He'd failed her now, yes, but he'd been her anchor once. Help me take it back, he pleaded. One last fight. The call dropped, leaving her reeling. Robert Diane, cornered, was begging her to save the firm she'd built with him. But how? The lawsuit, the frozen account, the threat. James held all the cards. She clutched Sophie's note, "Don't ever give up," and forced herself to think. Jennifer Brooks had texted about lunch. Michael Evans and Emily Parker were ready to bolt. She had allies if she could wield them. Her phone buzzed again. Jennifer, lunch canceled. Emergency meeting with Summit Ventures tomorrow. James is screwing us all. Let's hit back. Sarah seized the lifeline. She called Jennifer, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Jen, I've got proof James is blackmailing Robert and rigging contracts. We can take him down. Jennifer's reply was steel. Good. I've rallied 26 clients, 70% of their revenue. We're meeting for the summit at noon. Bring everything. Michael and Emily joined the call, their fury palpable. He's bleeding us dry, Michael growled. I'm in, Emily added. Summit needs to see the numbers. This ends now. The plan crystallized. Confront Summit Ventures, the majority shareholder, with hard evidence. The recording, the fee hikes, James's secret 10% sale. If they pulled their contracts, James would collapse under his own weight. But a shadow lingered, Robert's loan. He'd begged her not to use it, his voice echoing in her mind. Let me die with some dignity. Exposing it could bury James for good, proof of blackmail. But it'd destroy Robert's legacy, the man who'd once saved her. She paced Sophie's note crinkling in her fist. Loyalty or justice? The choice clawed at her soul. Midnight struck, and her doorbell rang again. She flinched, expecting another threat, but found Ryan Cooper, rain-soaked and urgent. I swiped James's meeting notes from the shredder, he panted, handing her a damp stack, scribbled in the margins. Push RJ out by Friday. Summit backs me if clients stay. Sarah's blood ran cold. Friday? 2 days away. James was accelerating his coup, and Robert's time was running out. He's unhinged, Ryan said. I heard him laugh about your bank account. His guy at the bank owed him a favor. The pieces clicked. The lawsuit, the freeze, the threat, all James tightening a noose. But Sarah had a rope of her own now, 26 clients, a recording, and Ryan's intel. Tomorrow she'd face Summit Ventures, not as a victim, but a warrior. Would Robert forgive her if she used his secret? Could she live with herself if she didn't? The fire in her chest roared, fueled by Sophie's words and Robert's plea. This wasn't just survival, it was war. Sarah Miller stood outside the towering glass facade of Summit Ventures' Boston headquarters, the March wind biting through her coat as noon approached. In her purse, Sophie's crumpled note and the USB drive weighed like grenades, each a weapon in the battle she'd waged since James Carter's betrayal. Her hands shook, not from cold, but from the stakes. 25 years of loyalty, Robert Johnson's dying plea, and a firm teetering on collapse. Inside, Jennifer Brooks, Michael Evans, Emily Parker, and 26 clients waited. Their collective fury a battering ram against James's empire. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was theirs. She stepped into the lobby, heels clicking on marble, and joined the group in a sleek conference room. Jennifer's tailored suit radiated steel. Michael's jaw was set like granite. Emily's eyes burned with quiet rage. Summit's board is on edge, Jennifer said, sliding a folder of doctored contracts across the table. James's fee hikes and that 10% sale have them spooked. Show them the recording, Sarah. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. She'd wrestled all night with Robert's secret, the illegal loan that could bury James. But his broken voice haunted her. Let me die with some dignity. She'd chosen her path. Win without breaking him. The Summit Ventures board filed 5 suits with grim faces, led by a silver-haired exec named Grayson. Sarah took the floor, her voice steady despite the storm inside. James Carter's blackmailing Robert Johnson and gouging your clients. Here's proof. She played the USB, James's chilling threat. Shut her up or we're done. Followed by Robert's feeble protest. Gasps rippled through the room. Ryan Cooper's notes came next, scribbled evidence of James's plan to oust Robert by Friday, his personal account fattened by millions. He's not just reckless, Sarah said. He's a thief. And 70% of your revenue, 26 clients. Walk if he stays? Grayson's eyes narrowed. That's a bold claim, Ms. Miller. Jennifer stood, slamming her folder down. Not a claim, a fact. Winter's healthcare is out unless James goes. Check the numbers. Michael and Emily echoed her, a chorus of defection. Grayson rubbed his temples, the board whispering furiously. We'll need time, he said. Sarah's heart sank. Time Robert didn't have. But Jennifer leaned in, voice like a blade. You've got until 5 p.m. or we're gone. Decide. The clock ticked toward Franklin and Associates' all-hands meeting at 2 p.m., and Sarah drove across town, adrenaline surging. She hadn't planned to attend, her termination barred her, but Robert's call from his locked office changed everything. She arrived at the familiar building, the receptionist's jaw dropping. Miss Miller? The meeting? I know, Sarah cut in, striding past. The conference room buzzed with tension. Partners flown in from New York, junior staff lining the walls, James conspicuously absent. Robert stood at the front, flanked by board members, his gaunt face a mask of exhaustion. He spotted her, relief flashing in his eyes. Thank you all for coming, he began, voice trembling. Recent decisions have shaken our clients. I'm thrilled to announce Sarah Miller's return as equity partner, leading client relations. Murmurs erupted, shock, hope, confusion. Sarah stepped forward, silencing the room. Thank you, Robert, but I need to clarify something. She pulled out the USB and Sophie's note, holding them like talismans. I'm not coming back. Robert's face froze. Sarah pressed on, her voice rising. Blackwell Consulting, with Summit's backing, has acquired Franklin and Associates. I'm joining them as a partner to oversee the transition. James Carter's been voted out effective now for actions against this firm's soul. The room exploded. Shouts, gasps, a junior staffer dropping his coffee. Robert staggered, clutching the podium. "Sarah, what have you done?" he rasped. "What you couldn't," she said softly. Summit saw the truth. "It's business, Robert. Nothing personal." The meeting dissolved into chaos, but Sarah walked out, head high. Her phone buzzed. "Jennifer, Summit caved. James is toast. Dinner tonight to plan Winter's future with Blackwell." A smile broke through her exhaustion. Not revenge, but justice, served cold and clean. Days later, Blackwell Franklin Consulting took shape, and Sarah demanded 10% of profits to fund cancer research in Sophie's name, a beacon of hope amid the ashes. Clients returned, 95% retention sealing her triumph. Robert faded fast, dying 6 months later. His last letter arrived on her desk. "Sarah, you saved what I couldn't. I'm proud of you. Forgive me." Tears fell as she read it, the wound of his failure still raw but softened by his remorse. James faced investigation for embezzlement, but the case stalled. Whispers of payoffs lingered, a loose end sparking debate. Had he escaped too easily? Sarah stood in her new corner office, gazing at Boston's skyline. The quarterly report glowed, 23% revenue growth, a phoenix risen from Franklin's ruins. Jennifer strode in, grinning. "The industry's calling it the slickest takeover in years. You proved relationships are the real gold." Sarah nodded, Sophie's note framed beside her desk. She hadn't sought this, justice had found her, patient and unyielding.